It was expected to be introduced in Austin at Circuit of the Americas, but it already arrived this weekend at the Marina Bay Street Circuit in Singapore. The Ferrari SF24 car debuts a new front wing which, after the floor, represents the most important aerodynamic component in current Formula One single-seaters. The modifications are not specific to the Asian track, as they are suitable for all the circuits still scheduled for the remainder of the year. This is the first update to the front wing since the start of the 2024 Formula One Championship, and although the changes may seem subtle, they are of significant importance. The changes to the wing concern the last two upper elements, specifically the third and fourth profiles. The contour of the flaps differs as they taper towards the outside, with the portion closest to the nose staying high before sharply sloping downwards. Compared to the previous version, the new wing generates more downforce in the inner portion than the outer. Overall, the maximum downforce produced has increased, allowing for better balance with even more rear-loaded setups. Ferrari now has an important tool, especially considering that on some tracks this year the team has been limited by insufficient front-end downforce. Another change involves the connection between the last two profiles and the vertical end plate strut. A different bridge now links the flaps to the external end plate where the curls also feature a more outward curved design. Ferrari aims to increase the outwash effect, directing airflow around the front tire and mitigating the negative impact tire turbulence has on the aerodynamics of the floor. The modifications to the end plate area highlight the critical role the front wing plays in the car's performance. The front wing is the most forward component of the car, setting the aerodynamic foundation and airflow that impacts the rest of the vehicle. Specifically, the central portion of the wing directs airflow towards the front suspension arms, which in turn distribute it between the upper and lower sections of the floor. Just as drivers complain about the aerodynamic disturbance from the car ahead during a race, every car's floor and rear wing are constantly working in the wake of the front wing. It is therefore easy to understand its importance, considering that the wing is also designed to counteract the turbulence generated by the front tires. In the documents submitted to the Federation, Scuderia Ferrari describes the modifications as improvements in downstream airflow across a wider polar range. In other words, the goal is to control tire turbulence at greater steering angles and yaw, ensuring more aerodynamic stability for the floor when the car slides in corners or faces crosswinds. Flexible front wings have been under scrutiny in recent weeks, leading to speculation that Ferrari may also be seeking more deformation in the new wing to gain a few extra kilometers per hour. Footage from the track will confirm or dispel these suspicions. However, given that the latest changes focus more aerodynamic load on the inner section of the wing, it is plausible to expect greater flexing. The biggest gain, though, is the early debut of the wing in Singapore, allowing Ferrari to gather data a month ahead of time to plan future updates. The opportunity lies in adapting the floor and bodywork to the new aerodynamic structure introduced by the redesigned front end, which would thus represent only the first step in the evolutionary process underway at Maranello. After focusing on this latest update brought by Ferrari this weekend and hoping it will help the Italian side in the battle against McLaren, let's shift focus to the track action on Friday at the 4.94-kilometer Marina Bay Street Circuit. The first free practice session for the Singapore Grand Prix is never too indicative of the performance hierarchy on the track, due to the difference in track conditions, which is still very dirty and environmental factors, with daylight and higher temperatures, compared to what will be present in qualifying and the race. Nevertheless, the impression this year, unlike in past seasons, is that no team or driver held back, with everyone pushing significantly, as much as the track allowed, right from the start. The standout performers from the beginning were Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris, who not only set the top 2 times but also delivered consistent on-track performances, showing a determined effort to post quick laps. The Ferrari came out on top in FP1, with Charles Leclerc's number 16 car posting the fastest time, but only 76 thousandths of a second ahead of Lando Norris in the number 4 McLaren. Max Verstappen's Red Bull clocked the 4th fastest time, behind the other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, and while the Dutchman seemed slower than his competitors, he wasn't as far off the pace as in recent races. Mercedes, on the other hand, continued to struggle to find a solid setup, with the car still highly sensitive to environmental conditions and failing to show any standout performance. We compared the data from Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, and Max Verstappen to get a clearer idea of what happened on track. In the first sector, Lando Norris set the pace, thanks especially to an excellent run through Turn 5, where he was 4 km/h faster than both Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. All the drivers, however, were within a tenth of a second. In the more challenging middle sector, the Monegasque driver began to pull ahead, clearly feeling comfortable with his car. The data shows Charles Leclerc applying his preferred driving technique, where he doesn't fully lift off the accelerator while navigating corners, allowing for better traction, rear rotation, and, as he recently stated himself, managing the aerodynamic load distribution along the car's longitudinal axis by modulating brake and throttle pressure. Like the Baku City circuit, the Marina Bay track has limited corner radius variety, making it relatively easy to balance the car, and Charles Leclerc's technique proves particularly advantageous. The SF24 single-seater performed well in terms of traction, for example, when exiting Turn 9 and especially Turn 14, confirming a well-set rear in terms of setup. Additionally, the switch from the old front wing to the new one on Carlos Sainz's car has eliminated a bothersome initial understeer, which is certainly a good sign for Maranello's engineers that this important update is heading in the right direction. Returning to the lap analysis, Max Verstappen struggled most in the middle sector, particularly in the tricky sequence of turns October 11-12, possibly due to the usual stiffness of the car's suspension. However, the Dutchman excelled in the extremely fast final corner of the circuit, highlighting a car that is not yet perfect in slow corners, but highly competitive in fast ones. As mentioned, this first free practice session was only a preview of what is still to unfold over the Singapore weekend, but the impression is that we may see another duel between McLaren and Ferrari, while we wait to see how Red Bull and Mercedes can improve as the weekend progresses. The second of the 3 practice sessions in Singapore is always the most representative as it takes place in the same floodlit, nighttime conditions as those of Saturday's qualifying session and Sunday's race at the Marina Bay Street Circuit. But as expected, it was Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc who once again appeared to be in a league of their own at the stunning street circuit in Singapore, with the other Ferrari SF24 of Carlos Sainz 0.6 off the pace in third, and McLaren's Oscar Piastri a further 10th back in fifth. Max Verstappen, who has gone 7 races without a win amid Red Bull's struggles, finished more than a second off the pace in 15th, with teammate Sergio Perez faring only slightly better in 8th. Mercedes also appeared to lack pace as George Russell took 7th and Lewis Hamilton 11th, with the former damaging a front wing late in the session as he hit the wall at Turn 8. Despite Lando Norris attempting to chase down Red Bull's Max Verstappen in the battle for the title, McLaren's main rivals on track at the moment are very clearly Ferrari.